A very good morning to one and all present here in this virtual session on Zoom. United Nations in November 2021 convened a very important conference, United Nations Climate Change Conference, more commonly referred to as COP26, held at Glasgow, United Kingdom, which resulted in around 200 countries signing the Glasgow Climate Pact. This was a reaffirmation of the Paris Agreement of 2015 to reduce global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. As you can see, the international deliberations and political dialogues on climate change are warming up. It is important for us to engage in relevant conversations related to practical approaches to attain sustainable development. Although there has been a lot of political dialogues and diplomacy happening around this and their scrutiny, but the grassroots level awareness, or in other words, the community awareness on this is quite less. Same is the case of community equipment. Although we speak a lot on sustainable development, one important strategy to develop sustainability, or what we say, save Earth for future generations and also use it for ourselves, is through, I think, by developing a sort of community resilience and adaptation. Today on the second day of International Symposium on deliberations on rethinking the environment, sustainability in the modern era, conducted by DME Law School, we are holding this panel discussion with some of the important stakeholders in the field of sustainable development. As they say, one way of developing community resilience is to engage in conversations regarding climatic change. That is the only reason why we decided to conduct this panel discussion with some of the global experts on climate change and sustainable development. I am Sri Durga TN, Assistant Professor, DME Law School. I would be moderating this session along with my colleague, Ms. Shambhavi Mishra. What we wish to have today is to have a interactive dialogue with all the eminent panelists present here. I would be honored to tell you that all our eminent panelists are the experts working on sustainable development, some of them directly connected with the Glasgow conference, being representatives there or working directly with the countries regarding that. Regarding the rules, each speaker can speak up to 9 minutes, and we wish to have a conversation conversation amongst you, which would be informative for all of us. Okay, now let me take the pleasure of introducing our eminent panelists. We have amongst us Dr. Debapriya Datta. He is a head advisor scientist in the Science for Equity, Empowerment and Development, State Science and Technology Program and Natural Resource Data Management System Division of Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. His work is related to developing cutting-edge technologies for a sustainable development. We have Mr. Anurag Bajpai. He's an expert on building efficiency. Mr. Anurag Bajpai is heading the technical division of Green Tree Global. He serves as a board member of International Building Performance and Simulation Association, Chairman FSAI UP Chapter, Co-Chairman ASSOCHAM GEM, Core Committee Member ASSOCHAM Environment and Climatic Change ECC and C Media. Mr. Anurag Bajpai's work is focused on energy efficiency, climate change, sustainability. We have with us Mr. Sridhar Ramurthy, a geologist and an environmentalist. He is a founder of Environics Trust. He is a co-founder of Taru. Mr. Sridhar has worked with many mainstream exploration organizations, Atomic Minerals Division, DAE, and later with ONGC Limited, which is an Indian public sector undertaking on oil extraction. He is a very reputed and renowned environmentalist, working on various environmental impact issues primarily related to mining, land acquisition, etc. Let me also take the pleasure to introduce Mr. Vincent Martinez, hoping to join us soon. He is from USA. He is the president of Architecture 2030. He has been working to solve the climatic crisis by catalyzing global building decarbonization efforts through the development and activation of robust networks focused on private sector commitments, education, training, public policy. Mr. Vincent has done a lot of significant work towards reducing carbon emissions, which is also one of the objectives in the recent Glasgow conference and also in the Glasgow Common Agreement in the Glasgow Pact. We have Dr. Nusrat Parveen Khan. She is the professor and dean of school, Bennett University, India, a very versatile and veteran academician with an experience of over 30 years. We have Miss Pierrette de Cassou from Haiti. She is a global public health diplomat, UN NGO representative. She is the founder of Haiti Cholera Research Foundation in the USA. She was also an NGO representative at COP26 representing Haiti Cholera Research Foundation. Her work is focused on global health, sustainability, and community resilience. We are also hoping to have Ms. Pierrette with us soon. Last, most importantly, we have Ms. Cecil Gaidot Alvarez from Philippines, the youngest Raman Magsaysay Award winner, also awardee, also won many other outstanding awards. She's a director of Earth Savers. She is the one who has pushed for the inclusion of cultural ingredients in Rio Declaration and provided intercultural input in the United Nations Climate Conference. Ms. Cecil is working towards making a community resilient towards the environment through the medium of culture and art. To that extent, she has organized an event called Wrestle Art, which is, using the cultural symbols to develop a sustainability towards environment. And most importantly, I'm also honored to have amongst us Dr. Rashmi Nagpal, who is the dean of our college, DME Law School. She is also a versatile academician with having a lot of academic experience. So we are honored to have all of you here. If the panel may permit, may I start with the first line of question?
We may begin. A very warm welcome to all our guests who spared their valuable time to be here with us today. I think we can begin, Durga, and Ms.
Yes.
Parrette can join maybe later.
Yes.
Durga, please get in touch with her immediately. Okay, so by the time we may start.
Yes, ma'am. So my first question is towards Dr. Debapriya Datta. Sir, you held so many diplomatic positions, also played a role in the government of India, having a vast research experience in the field of environment and sustainable development. My question is that how do you think the science and technology, because I've seen that you have a lot of work in sustainability in lines of science and technology. So how do you think science and technology would help in achieving our sustainable development goals and also, meet the issues related to climate change? This is one thing. And also one thing I want to ask you, because in the previous conversations with us, you had been telling to us about, community resilience. So can you talk to us a little bit about the science and technology in consonance with sustainable development and also the community resilient aspect of it?
Thank you very much, Sri Durga, and also, all the participants. I have some problem here at the, the connections here, but doesn't matter. I will be speaking on this. As you were asking about, if you see, all of you, I see all the young, minds joining here. You must remember, whenever we are talking about sustainable development goal, is that triangle. The triangle of sustainability, which talks about the socially acceptable, environmentally, sustainable, and economically viable. So these are the three triangles, basically, you should keep it in mind, whatever the sustainable development goal related work you do, whether it is from the point of view of science and technology or from the socioeconomic, the aspects. So now, what are the role the science and technology can play in, the implementing the sustainable development goal at a field level or at the community level? If we, if you see the socially social aspects, as you know, we live in a the society where we have a livelihood system. Each of us are living within a livelihood system. So the part of the livelihood systems, as you see here, it's the the human capital, the economic capital, and also, like the what you do for your work. So this livelihood system, if you see, like for all of you, any system, if you analyze, the system has a weakest link and the system has a strongest link. Now, this weakest link, like I will give an example also. This weakest link, if you want to, like any one of us are trying to improve, the weakest part of our life. So if for improving that, you can bring the technology for that. And the strongest link, what you can the strongest link, then we can improve by taking bringing the technology to the efficiency of the strongest link, so that a social entrepreneurships can be developed. For an example, if you go to in a rural area, mainly our rural areas, livelihood system is agriculture based. But in many places, if you go to a place called X, you may find that there the main problem of the agriculture is of pest or pest affections or infections, or the yield is low than the average. So that become the weakest link into the livelihood system, where science and the relevant technology can be brought. And in the same place, you will find that the people, since they are living, they have certain local knowledges, local wisdom. So that can be utilized, and by bringing the relevant technology to improve the efficiency of that, to create a social entrepreneurships. So this is the way, the socially and the economically, the sustainability you can bring. When you do that, on one thing generally, from the science and technology point of view, we forget is this environment. So the technology, when you bring a technology for this weakest and the strongest link, you must keep it in mind that, the environmental situations in which you are bringing. Suppose if you are doing it in a hilly region, you shouldn't bring that type of technology which is destructive to the ecosystem. The similar things, if you go to a, the coastal region, you should bring, shouldn't bring up the technology which are, going to also destroy the fragile ecosystem in the coastal areas. So in that way, the science and technology good system. And please keep it in mind that any sustainable development goal, the main, if you see the sustainable development goal 1 and sustainable development 2, they are the, there are 17, but they are the main focus. They all depend, they are all, though they are interlinked, but the core of them is the human being and the human's livelihood system. So please, that's the context where any science and technological intervention should be done. This is out of my experience. Now, if you look it into the core of an sustainable development goals of the UN, one thing they have talked about is that two things rather they talk. They talk about that no one should be left behind. And if you see that our government of India's, the focus is sabke saath, sabka vikas. And at the same time, the second thing is talking about the resilience building, because the resilience building is mainly in the context of changing, the climate, and which is the increasing the extreme disaster events. If you observed in the last the 4 to 5 years, the extreme disaster events are the increasing. So so these are the two aspects basically based on them, like the the resilience, the mitigations measures for that, the technological interventions generally are being done. But from 2006, the concept of the community resilience came, where you look at it into that any type of an uncertainty in the community's life, whether it is an economic uncertainty, whether it is a health related, uncertainty, whether it's an, the other type of social uncertainties that affects ultimately the communities. Again, I am coming back to the community's life and livelihood. So, and which gets more pronounced during the last pandemic period, like what we are going through the last 2.5 and 3 years. So this gives a cascading effect. So in the context of that, the Department of Science and Technology, we have started a community resilience resource center concept, which the community COVID resilience resource center, because if you see the impact of COVID, I don't know how many of you have been back, I have a victim of twice of, the COVID, like this doesn't affect only your health. It affects your, the societal and the economic aspects also, especially in the context of society. So the resilience of the this community COVID resilience resource centers, what we are establishing. We are working also in the UNDP in India. So we are basically looking at it into the three phases. One is a pre-COVID stage where you create awareness, where like the student community, like you people can be a big harbinger to that. Then during the COVID stage, how you can through the the minimum available resources can basically you support the you can support the the main health system. And the third is most important is the post-COVID period. How, if you see during the COVID period, the mostly affected are the the education. Most of the school children, they couldn't go. Like the livelihood system itself, and like the entrepreneurships, which can be a big change make the engine for this post-COVID recovery. So we are focusing on this the aspects from this community COVID resilience resource centers, and working with the community, and it will vary from place to place. The idea is, one end, when we do the science and technological research, like suppose you do the modeling to know about that, what are the uncertainties in the physical processes in the the atmospheric systems or in the soil and water system. But really, unless and until you can transform it into the context of an communities, the life and the livelihood system, it will of no use. And that's the way that we are trying to impact the community through this community resilience resource centers, and to address and create the example of the sustainable development goal at the community and at the field level. So this is the way we are going. And my message to the all the young people here, you should think up at that the way in our life we want to create a resilience by reducing the uncertainties. Please, whatever you are doing through that, trying to bring that into the larger perspective of the community, and that a community level resilience. Please remember, each of us, an individual, are a unit of a community. Unless the community is resilient, your life and livelihood are not resilient. The world is facing different type of challenges. Like it's not, it's some of them are man-made. Some of them are climate-made. Or each of you must think in an innovative way. It's not like definitely technology is a great enabler, but the time has come. Like as like all of you from the national education policy perspective, the differentiations between science, the technology, the arts, and all of these things are getting fudging away. And you are the the people, like we must take this as an at an experimentations and the operations level at a different the community level. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share whatever little I have understood with you.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, you were talking about building community resilience. In fact, through the academic student community also being part of it. Mr. Anurag Bajpai, who is a founder, who is from the Green Tree Global, he is also running an academy which is about building, equipping the student community and professionals for adapting to the climatic changes and such kind of issues. Mr. Anurag, I think you also would be thinking about building, equipping the student and the young professional community. Is it something in line with the community resilience for the climatic change?
Actually, like Sridurga, I just take one point. Like, if any one of you, like as you're saying, Mr. Anurag is working, this is the time for collaborations. So the most important SDG is SDG 17. like to work together to address the other SDGs. So we will be open to work with anyone like who are, like working for the causes of the community resilience. Thank you very much.
So, Anurag sir, would you like to share with us about your, work in this field? And also particularly, I was, I just saw that you have work in the, making a student community resilience, young professional community resilience. I think this is important because, we are the people who are the most energetic and also maybe, who are equipped in all means, whether it is through education or whether it is through economic means, and we do have the know-how to think about it compared to any illiterate or some other kind of tribal communities who are actually more impacted by the climatic change because of various reasons. So would you like to talk about it, sir? Anurag sir?
Thank you so much, Ms. Sri Durga. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, sir.
Great. Thank you so much, DME Law School, for the opportunity. And I also would extend my sincere thanks to Dr. Debapriya for actually starting the great conversation and also ended up with the collaboration, because this is something which is the very much important aspects with respect to the building of the community resilience. I'll also maybe I can start my point with respect to Dr. Debapriya mentioned, and then specifically response to or comment to student community component which you are asking for. So in terms of, let's say, the community resilience, as sir has mentioned very clearly, it's primarily should have the intent in terms of reducing the uncertainty. This is very much important. And if I look at the overall aspects of resilience, it's very diversified also. It's diversified with respect to the geography, with respect to the community as well. When we look at the geographical differences, then we look at the maybe urban location resilience is different compared to peri-urban or maybe rural community level resilience. They are all very much like different to each other, and they need a very different kind of solution or the specific community building process where they can develop the resilience on their own, and they can actually create the comfort as per their own diversified requirement as well. Now, some of the points which Dr. Debapriya has mentioned, the technology, science, they certainly are very much like the tool in terms of helping them in building this resilience. And this is something which has been the part and parcel of the activities which I think the Government of India initiative, different policies, the technology, social entrepreneur like Selco and other companies, they have done. And this is something which requires a lot of attention as well. Still, we see the rural component is one of the robust community that is existing in India. And we need to look at it with more carefully manner. And we also need to look at what are the technologies which can be integrated with respect to building that community, because in case if they become vulnerable, there'll be a major challenge, and the change would be required in terms of making them more resilient. Second point in this case is certainly policy component from the Government of India initiative. As Dr. Debapriya has mentioned, there are a lot of initiatives that have already been taken up. If I start with the rural component, there are a lot of schemes like Kusum for the farmers, maybe income enhancement. There are other specific component which are already there from the urban level community resilience. If I look at primarily the let's say the building efficiency component, which I look after primarily in my organization, then maybe there are a lot of policies which have been prepared, which have been regulated, but we also look at the receptiveness in terms of the implementation of those policies. Policies can always be built, prepared, and can be enforced. but enforcement monitoring is one thing which needs to be checked thoroughly. That is very much important. Now, coming to the specific point which Ms. Sri Durga you have asked, and this is related to the student education. We work with a lot of colleges, schools, and the student community, not only catering the urban locations, but we primarily talk to a lot of, let's say, second tier or third tier colleges, where we feel the resources in terms of the infrastructure, like labs and the specific hardware, they are not there. Even some of the cases, the specific knowledge-based infrastructure, like professors, teachers, they are not there as well. And that is where we see a lot of opportunity for the education segment like ours, which is named as, let's say, GT Academy, which is playing a lot of role in terms of reaching out to them, making them informed, building them industry ready. And sometimes these are the hit and trials, which maybe I think the opportunities like pandemic, they also gave us in terms of making them more online receptive community, because before that, anything and everything in terms of the education, it has to be the maybe offline. Now, with respect to the new scenario where in general community also has adapted themselves in terms of taking up the online classes, and that is where we see a lot of feedback, lot of good feedback, lot of let's say upgradation of the skill set, and lot of, let's say, community building activities which are going on at the second tier, third tier, or even the rural area level as well through our initiative with respect to the GT Academy. In terms of the organization level, we work with a lot of community component in terms of, let's say, the urban, peri-urban, as I said, the rural area, for example, energy access to the specific areas like Jharkhand, or even the western UP or eastern UP locations. And that is, there are a lot of locations in India where we look at the opportunities are immense. We also look at the opportunities for the newer technologies. We also look at the opportunities for the education, which certainly has been the part and parcel for primarily the urban or peri-urban locations. I think we have to have the model. We have to have some specific, let's say, support, even from the government side. Even the social entrepreneurship should also come forward through the support from the community, and they should actually look at this aspect with respect to the building of the community there locally, building up the economic empowerment there. Because in case if we look at a lot of issues with the urban locations, which are, let's say, slums areas or anything which is unwanted or unplanned, I'm sure like the major or maybe main root cause of these unwanted maybe development is nothing but the economic stability only. So people who are working in not urban locations, they are from the rural locations, they migrate to the urban locations to have more money, to earn more money. And in case if we can have the infrastructure available locally, I'm sure like they will not require anything but to stay there. They'll earn enough to earn their livelihood, and they'll be more comfortable. They'll be more happy. And I'm sure like it is not only about the economic health, but certainly the physical health, which is much more important for the human being. So I think there are a lot of deliberations, comments I look forward to. And this is my initial submission on your question, Ms. Sri Durga.
Thank you so much, sir. One of the goals in the sustainable development SDG 4 is related to education. So I think this is how education and sustainable development would go together, and ultimately sustainable development is in the background and is based on environmental sustainability. So very relevantly, you had told about those things. Since you were talking about the urban rural differences, in the needs of the community. Also, maybe there are some differences in the type of climatic issues that they face, and also I think developmental issues they face. So in that lines, I would like to ask Mr. Sridhar, who is from the other side, that is from the non-governmental sector, a very renowned environmentalist. Sir has been working a lot in the field of land acquisition and mining related environmental issues. So one of the most important problems faced regarding the land acquisition is that, especially land acquisition through eminent domain. I mean, recently there has been a lot of issue going on in Kerala. They are going to start a new rail. So the environmental impact issues and related to the developmental projects, and the land acquisition done by the government for the developmental projects. So how do you think one should go, or the country should go in the line of sustainable development, but also satisfying the needs of the community in terms of urban development, or in otherwise issues related to mining also, which, because these are at times what the community needs. Although Mahatma Gandhi had once told that we can only have for our need, not for our greed. But then how do we balance it? Mr. Sridhar, can you tell us something related to that?
Thank you very much, and thank you to Dr. Datta and Anuragji for beginning this conversation and for laying the ground for it. What I say might be a little counterintuitive, because I think that the notion of sustainable development itself is a little tricky. We can have communities which are sustainable, which we have seen among our indigenous or tribal communities or Adivasis. But the development process itself cannot be sustainable because it will continuously change. So if we mean by sustenance same kind of things, like for instance, if we have been using coal all these years, it cannot sustain. And tomorrow, if we are saying, in renewables, if we are using lithium and cobalt to make and silicon to make solar cells and batteries, they will also not be sustainable. So I think we should relook at how communities can be sustainable, and what we can how we can enable communities to be more and more But what I feel is before coming to the important question that you asked, how kind of the use of eminent domain is hurting. We are not just sitting on a climate crisis now. Actually, we are sitting on at least four kind of intertwined crises. One, of course, is climate, right? Where we are having runaway climate change, which is impacting almost 1 billion people at least. There are erratic and extreme events. Then we have economic crisis. We have very huge debt burden of different countries, and also and also failing industry. For instance, in our country itself, we have close to about 10 lakh crores of what we call as non-performing assets. And so there is a deep economic crisis. The third kind of crisis is what I call the crisis of workers, because there is heavy mechanization and post-COVID, even more mechanization, and industries looking at avoiding people to be there. And robotization, and also you will find artificial intelligence taking over many of the soft jobs, just as we speak in Industry 4.0. And finally, we have the crisis of capital. We have very skewed kind of capital assets which are with people, like the recent Oxfam report said only 68 people have more than 50% of nation's wealth. So, so when we are talking about climate, we cannot, like underestimate the, impact of all of these. And now what happens is the policy choices, the kind of things that our government takes makes a very major impact. If you look at a website called esuvidha.gov.in, which is the Prime Minister's Office project management group, you'll find some 1,066 projects, out of which nearly 400 projects are coal or coal related, or and many of us know coal is as our own minister and COP said, is on the way of phase down. The Coal India thinks that but what we are not doing or not realizing is we are not rationalizing the use of natural resources. I think if the idea of eminent domain is to be used effectively, one is, we need to understand how we can rationalize the use of land and other resources. I'll give you an example. Many of you would know that, the what is known as the Hazira, Bijaypur, Jagdishpur pipeline of GAIL, which started, GAIL in India. There were 7 fertilizer plants that were set up. The IFCO plant in Aula in UP was set up in 400 acres of land, whereas in Babrala, the Tatas established a similar capacity plant, but they acquired 1,800 acres of land. So there's a huge scope of rationalization of land requirement. Similarly, if we look at our top 40 coal mines, they can virtually provide all the coal that we need. But we have close to about 500 coal mines in India. Very recently, the government, using its this thing as a prerogative, as a eminent domain, and under the new law, auctioned 99 new has put up 99 more coal blocks in auction. And our own concern at that time was there was an industrialist and there was the government. They were auctioning on an electronic platform without any knowledge to the persons whose land would be acquired. So this this to me is a very gross injustice, and completely undermines the whole idea of sustainable communities. Once again, if 40 to 50 coal mines can meet our needs, then we don't need to pockmark rest of the country, with many more coal mines and impact people. So we could look at more, kind of occupations which are more harmonious, looking at various kind of alternatives for it. The same example, similar example is of bauxite mining in India. NALCO is sitting on a 800 million ton Panchpatmali deposit in Orissa. But we are, kind of Ratnagiri coast, the Western Ghats, and then, many of you would have heard about the Niyamgiri issue, which was quite, very well, kind of known to not only Indians, but across the world, where I was also one of the petitioners on behalf of the community. Where what we find is just that 70, even now the company and the government is trying to push for that mine, which will only last for 10 years. And we would have destroyed water resources, we would have destroyed several other things. So what I would like to emphasize is that, what today we are seeing is the vulnerability of the community is coming from 2 sources. One is global climate change and globalization. And if we overlay, both the regions where impact of globalization and climate change is happening, our coastal communities and our tribal communities are going to be the worst impacted. Of course, we in urban areas might still cry about air pollution and things like that. But their condition would be very, very bad. And therefore, we need to seriously rethink. And in the development process, we should ensure, sometimes I think the SDGs give a way of escape for communities and the corporates because, there are too many kind of indicators. And the issue of equity is not really emphasized. So if we look at 4 fundamental parameters, that how self-reliance or endogeneity would be with every community, how economic efficiencies are brought out without affecting the environment, and how it is equitable. If the government keeps this, and it's a part of our constitution. So if we sometimes I think if we sincerely follow our constitution, a lot of our problems will be resolved. But today, considerations are more stronger than the constitution. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Yes, there is always, I think in the beginning of my, introduction, I was telling the same thing. There is a lot of gap between the policy dialogues and the, diplomatic dialogues that we do at the United Nations conferences, and then how to actually, implement it in the, community level, because there is very difficult gaps to fill those things. It is, I think, very difficult or even sometimes impossible. Promises are being done at Glasgow and many other places. And then how do we actually implement it here? Is there any political will to implement it here? That is also doubtful.
If I have a couple of minutes, I can share, and where I would seek collaboration from everybody, is that, there's a lot of talk about just transition. So what we have started is, in the coal-bearing areas of India, what we find is whether it's climate or other issues, the economic parameters of coal mining, given the reducing renewable costs, is going to end in the next 2 decades or 3 decades. So what happens to people, who are working currently? What happens to communities around it? So we thought that this will be the most complex issue to deal with. And we have initiated, what we have been doing is how to shift to organic farming, how to produce organic fertilizers, then how to look at creating producer companies, which is being pushed by the Indian government also. How to create producer companies, not merely for like the farmer producer companies. How can a producer company come up and produce renewable energy? And some of the people where new mines are being opened up are resisting, saying that the coal is not going to run away. Allow us to do our farming and other activities. And if the worst comes, then we can think of coal mining. So there are some kind of nascent experiments that are going on. And as Dr. Debapriya Datta said, this is an era of collaboration and not competition. Thank you very much.
Yes, so that's what I mean. When we were reading about the Glasgow Pact, we are speaking a lot about the 2021 Glasgow conference. Then the question is that, is it binding? No, then it is not binding. So then how can we enforce it? So these questions regarding international law and municipal law collaborations, this is also questionable. On the same note, I would first of all, I would like to introduce Mr. Vincent Martinez again. He is a president of Architecture 2030. He has been fundamentally working on reducing carbon emissions, which is one of the promises that Glasgow has given, and which is one of the biggest reasons for global warming. Now I want to talk to Ms. Cecil. Ma'am, what Mr. Sridhar was telling was regarding the gap between the political, community and us. We are the common community, I think, local community. And ma'am, you have done a lot of work in, bringing cultural symbols to reduce that gap, I believe. So can you tell, and I think she is one of the person who is pushed to add culture in the element of environment and sustainable development. I think back in Rio Declaration. So, ma'am, can you think about or can you tell us how you are, what is your idea about culture as an element in reducing this gap and to make the community more resilient? Because yes, ma'am. Ma'am, you are
please
yeah.
unmute yourself.
Please unmute yourself, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. And I really appreciate this opportunity for this cross-cultural dialogue. First of all, I listened very intently on the speakers and certainly agree science and technology is so important. As a matter of fact, the UN has declared this year as a year for basic science for the SDGs. But I would like to add as an essential component of the triangulated formula that was presented, which included, from what I heard, definitely environment, social concerns for people, and the economy. We must consider as an essential part of actualizing the Sustainable Development Goals, of doing the emergency action. We come from small island and archipelagic states. And unless there is really action, emergency action, not to breach 1.5, you are really causing the annihilation of people in these small island and archipelagic states, and really worsening the situation. It's an existential problem. So please add effective cultural communications with lifelong values learning, because in order to really resolve this problem, brilliant science and technology, but how does it reach the people, the masses, all sectors, if you do not communicate, if you do not inform, if you do not popularize your data with cultural symbols that people understand, for them to begin to appreciate their connectivity to habitat, to heritage, to history, to creative industry. And we're talking of education for all. And if you want it to be really effective and relevant, not based on, well, you call globalization, there is so much impact of cultures of other people superimposed on our indigenous culture. So it is important to have the traditional culture's values to be reinforced. This is got to be our concern. We are worried. We see the problem of war. And you know what war is doing? So much carbon as well, killing people, destroying everything. It is as bad as climate change catastrophes. And if we don't deal with this, and if everything is left to politicians, bureaucrats, even some teachers, I'll tell you, they can't even tell you what the 17 Sustainable Development Goals are. So how are they going to relate this to the students and let them act? You need effective cultural communications for people to be informed, to understand, to relate, to be involved, and to be part of a collective action. Decarbonization, every single citizen can reduce their carbon footprint, but do they know how? Are they being told? We have to use even soap opera. India has soap opera, Korea, we do, where our people are addicted to soap opera. Why is it not integrated instead of just mistresses and all kinds of things? You need to input it in poetry, in music, in paintings, in architecture, your green building, Everything must be part and parcel, and communications is a key. And it is always absent. And globalization, they pick up the Madison Avenue, a 1-minute kind of infomercial. You have to understand that it must be rooted in their consciousness, in their traditions. And you must use techno arts, the synergy between technology and all disciplines of the arts in order to reach the heart and minds of the people. My husband, who founded the Earth Savers, said, and we are totally committed to this. You talk of COVID, I'm a COVID survivor. I even have cancer back, but we're still fighting. I lost my husband with sudden death, and the grief is unbelievable. It's like a stab in the heart that you can't really get rid of. Now, he said, and we must believe this, we must defuse the ecological time bomb of global warming today to save tomorrow. We must defuse this. Every medium must be used for education, but creative education, not rote memory kind of education. A crusade, the moral equivalent of war in confronting climate change, war, health problems. It must be waged effectively and swiftly. What it takes to save the earth and care for people and promote peace and sustainability is a change of attitude, lifestyle, consumption, habits of thinking, and way of viewing creation. We must pool efforts. Yes, I heard you say it. Partnerships is the key. It is necessary. Resources must be pulled together. And the blessed Paris Accord, which promised funding, should really happen for sustainable development. Nothing short of a social movement, a collective undertaking to ensure the very survival of mankind and the life in the galaxy. If we don't believe that, if we use creative arts education so people are unable, they are empowered, they are being healed from all kinds of traumas, we need the arts relevant, habitat, history, heritage, language, creative industry based, not copied from Broadway, not copied from the West End, but conceived and developed and drawn from the wealth of experience of the community. You talk of African lives matter, indigenous lives matter. A lot of the problem with land, which is causing so much conflict, especially for indigenous peoples, is like what you said. There are so many laws. My husband was a senator, so many laws, but it is not executed. And the powerful, the elite, the greedy, as what Gandhi said, are the ones who can escape from really being punished if they do criminal acts. So you as a law school, what can be done? Look at the United Nations. I mean, it has conventions galore. And we won in China, trying to, in a sense, raid what belongs to us. We won in the arbitral court. Can we do anything? We have our government saying, oh, we can't fight them, but here is Ukraine telling you, you can fight for what is right. So we need communications, we need creative education where people are critical, they have the freedom and the courage to dare to voice out what is right and to fight for what is right. Because if we are quiet when there is something wrong, we are an accessory. Now, How do you change the mindset in the UN so that if we have conventions, excuse the word, out of passion, damnation, you better follow it or you're out. You should be isolated. You should, not be part of the human community if you cannot defer to the law. If we agreed on a law, what is the law about if you do not observe it? If the criminals, look at our country, we have the dictatorship we thrown and is coming back. What is the use if you cannot, for God's sake, punish what is or what wrong has been committed? If there is no contrition and reparation. We went through war with Spain, with America, with Japan, but they apologized and they did some reparations. Something's got to be done. I don't know. You are the legal minds. You can create the change. You can call for it. Your ambassador is very eloquent in the UN. Speak out. How do we execute the conventions? You don't sign and they just say, oh, I'm not part of it, I can get out of it, or whatever. Crazy reasons. What must be done? If you put ordinary people to prison, then your politicians with greed should likewise be punished. So that you have an example. Corruption is causing more poverty. The battle is equity of opportunities. And if we don't, doggone it, help, it's going to be all useless. The same thing, we have all the small island states trying to find out how they will exist. They're being submerged and it can be business as usual. So we need everybody's voices. Look at Malala, to speak on education, a young girl. Look at Thunberg, a young student who can call everybody to arms about fighting for survival against climate catastrophes. Wow, if all the law students, all the legal minds can press on the United Nations that there must be a system or an acceptance of what to do if you are not deferring to the law that you have signed. That is the issue. And please put cultural communications and inclusive techno-arts education, because now you need the synergy. All the arts disciplines which touches the heart, the mind, the imagination, and creative empowerment. That, besides natural resources, human resources, must all be
I think there is some connectivity issue.
Maybe we can wait for a minute.
Yeah.
called Allah, Buddha, God, but we can do it. And I believe what we're doing with this SDGs resilient art is to seed in the United Nations the concept. If you have a sports Olympics, you can have a techno arts SDGs Olympics, so people can understand, appreciate, and know how it relates to the betterment of their condition, stopping violence against mankind and Mother Earth. That's what we're doing. All disciplines in the arts, reaching millions through technology. You have social media platforms, you have broadcast. I run a broadcast. But we have to reach every single one. If you're talking nobody to be left alone, they will be left alone if you do not communicate to them. If you do not provide a values lifelong learning that will get them to get rid of greed and to care, to have compassion, and love, not just in the what you call romantic notion, but it is really empathy, sympathy, getting hurt. I cry every time I see what's happening in Ukraine. I realize what happened to our country. I lost my father. I never saw him. He was fighting for freedom so that I would be born free. We've got to have that kind of courage of conviction for every citizen. And there will be no bad politicians because we will all get rid of them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Cecile, for that scintillating talk. Before moving ahead, I would just like to thank Dr. Datta for being on the panel. I think he has to leave because of some prior commitments. Thank you so much for being a part of this panel discussion. And hopefully we will be able to take your arguments forward in the coming panel and as well as outside the panel as well. So thank you, Dr. Datta. Moving on from here, there's a very beautiful thing that Madam Cecile has pointed out to, and which is the collective undertaking of all of the institutions, social, political, and even legal perhaps, in the society, and the understanding of symbols and languages and arts, which should come from within the community and then spread out forwards. So probably we are now talking about a bottom to up approach. And in this entire situation, as she has very rightly pointed out, the critical, communicative, and a symbolization is necessary. And I think academics remains to be one area where all of these three things kind of, collide with each other. And we have with us Professor Dr. Nusrat Parveen, who has been in academia for more than 30 years now. And she was a former dean of Jamia Millia Islamia. And I would now call upon you, Dr. Parveen, to throw some light as to how academia is, trying to make this connection, maybe in the capacity building of the community resilience and the the total understanding of the sustainable development goals that there are. Dr. Nusrat, the floor is open for your comments. Dr. Nusrat, are you here?
Please check with ma'am if she's there.
Ma'am, she is here. She is here. I can see her. Ma'am, can you hear us? I'll just give her a call.
Kumain ka na. Kumain ka na. Nakabili na ng mga papel.
I'm there.
So, I think there is some nuisance nearby my house, lots of noise. So, yeah. So, I'm here. Thank you very much for inviting me for this wonderful, event which you are organizing. And I think lots of collaboration I can see with international organizations as well. And
thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us, ma'am, despite your busy schedule.
Thank you so much for inviting me, actually, Professor Dr. Rashmi Khurana, who's the dean, and Betpriya, probably she is a coordinator and has been sending the mails to me all the time. And of course, DME School of Law, Noida, who's, carrying on this international conference in collaboration with the University of Santiago and the United Nations Environment Program, and this as a wonderful platform to talk about, environmental concern and especially global environmental concern in the context of various conference, this COP and Glasgow conference, etc., which happen time to time. So I'm very thankful. Though I'm from academia, I was hearing the previous speakers who I understand have worked practically with the environment. I am also a part of a member of some environmental organizations, but more than that, I have worked for my PhD itself on air pollution way back in 1999 and 2000, and that was a point of time when there was lots of concern about environment. In India, at least, that was the time when the CNG buses were, diesel and petrol vehicles were replaced by CNG, and all the buses were switched over to CNG, plus industries which were located within Delhi or a little, on the boundaries of Delhi were relocated to the outskirt locations. So there are efforts, and then we see the vehicles whereby they have been certified by Bharat stage 1, 2, 3. However, we were a little lagging behind in that, but it was going on. We have to have a pollution check sticker on our vehicle. So we see that even it's now more than 3 decades, the international community has been, as well as national communities have been attempting to tackle the confluence of environmental deterioration. We are also talking about, fossil fuel dependence, which is a big source of pollution. Then economic disparity and persisting social injustice, which is hampering the goal of achieving sustainable development. Today we see it's obvious that the rate of these worldwide tendencies has not been decreased much. Much less has been halted or reversed. The magnitude of these trends, in fact, at some places have been increased, and the repercussions have extended to the point that they now endanger the stability, and in some cases, even the very existence of the communities worldwide. So, global sustainability crises of the past have evolved into actually now to be tackled through local resilience. When we, your topic for today and this session, this community resilience and sustainability resilience is actually is the need of the time, because resilience is the capacity of any system, be it family, your country, or Earth's biosphere, to adjust to the long-term changes while retaining your core identity. So we rely on the resilience of all the systems that sustain us and our well-being. And these systems, if these systems and whenever these systems fail, we suffer. So I think earlier speakers already talked about today we are confronting these environmental, energy, and economic equitable E-force crisis that threaten to destabilize the institutions which we care about, particularly at the local level. However, there is a plus side is that there is now greater clarity than ever before about how to comprehend and effectively deal with these problems. That is something which because we always need to be positive. We cannot just shun the things because it's happening in a very, very slow pace or in a negative manner. When we talk of climate actions, actually, and all these problems which is happening, it can be classified into 2 types: mitigation and adaptation. When we say mitigation, it seeks to address the underlying causes of climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions in order to avoid further global temperature rise. On the other hand, adaptation, it focuses on mitigating the impact or anticipated impact of climate change. So we can say, in other words, adaptation is a term that refers to the process of enhancing climate resilience. But because of these strategies are crucial for resolving the presented problem. But because the poor and marginalized are disproportionately impacted by climate change, and its adverse effect. So adaptation or resilience investment has a stronger chance of improving and protecting their development, their well-being in the short and medium term. There are lots of financial investment in the climate change, which is accelerating, but the results are not as compared to. Professor who talked before me talked about Malala Yousafzai's efforts Yeah, there are some, very efforts on the part of people who, there are many other efforts, many other people have taken the pain. So sustainability and resilient communities, when we talk of actually, these are the ones who can adopt to changing conditions, absorb disturbance and flexibility. So we have to create that environment. Even the cities that have spent decades focusing on sustainability and resilience have works to do. They also, I mean, it is not that their work is finished. Way back, when Stockholm conference occurred and our Prime Minister in Srimati Indira Gandhi was one of the speaker invitee over there. So she talked about, rather than talking about clean, healthy, this environment, she talked about poverty. She talked about the dirt, and she talked about that in a developing country, this cannot be tackled so quickly. So there are many issues, and however I understand these issues are somehow being, awareness is generating. I mean, the people, it is, in short, I'll say method to sustainability and resilience will very certainly be unique to each community. Keeping in view and its circumstances. So they cannot be altogether one and the same methodology. They are unique for each community and its circumstances. And that may include, but not limited to, developing resilience, intelligence activities. There are different, then communities are the ideal level of focus for building resilience. Then sustainability and resilience are also to be taken in a very distinct concept, but they are complementary to each other. The sustainability prioritize outcomes, however, resilience prioritize the process. There is a long debate which is going on, and we know that around in 2015 December, regarding this climate change policy, 197 countries signed the Paris Agreement. Around countries around the world talked about average temperature increase to less than 2 degrees Celsius. I feel if we take at a very local understanding how much increase of temperature by all those chlorofluorocarbons which are released while we are using air conditioners and fridges, and the number is increasing each passing day. So I think while talking about whether it is Paris Agreement, whether it is about international, other international guidelines, IPCC, or the recent intergovernmental declarations such as Addis Ababa Action Agenda, or New Urban Agenda, and a 2030 Agenda. But before that, even if people don't understand that, I think charity begins at home. We all have to take care. All these, big agendas, big agreement, they have incorporated many things such as disaster risk reduction, resilience building measures as a critical component and precondition of sustainable development. So, and then we have SDGs, whereby lots have been taken care. IPCC report 2022, they are taking it that methods for analyzing and assessing vulnerabilities have been evolved, and it is commonly accepted that vulnerability varies within the communities and between societies, regions, and countries, as well as changing with time. So, IPCC is also recognizing the importance of multiple types of knowledge, including scientific knowledge, all of the speakers talked about, indigenous and local knowledge, in comprehending and evaluating the climate adaptation process and activities, which are aimed at mitigating the hazards which are associated with human-induced climate change. Also, it focuses on adaptation solutions that are practical, feasible, and consistent with justice values. Now, when we talk of environmental justice, it's an important and interesting thing that today we talk of environmental justice. And when we talk of environmental justice, there are some important component of it. Environmental justice or climate change impact have different type of, maybe it is, it can refer to broadly, if we understand three principles: distributive justice, which we refer to equitable distribution of burden and benefits among the individuals, nations, and generation; and procedural justice, which refers to who decides and participates in decision making; and thirdly, recognition, which entails basic respect for the robust engagement with diverse cultures and prospects. So effectiveness of all this refers to the degree to which an activity decreases vulnerability and climate related risk, and build the resilience and averts, maladaptations. So, there are many shifts, there are transformation and system transitions in the areas of energy, land, ocean, coastal, freshwater. We have seen many calamities. Now we are actually used to United States suffers, Australia suffers, lots of disasters which we talk about. But I understand, with whatever less or small knowledge I have, disasters are once upon a time maybe used to be the natural disasters. Today, all these disasters are the results of human activities, human cruelty, human behavior towards the nature. And that is why all this, everything which right now we are talking about, and many more things even we are not talking about, is that we are moving ahead without thinking anything either for our future or anything even for ourselves, our own benefits. So we have become very careless and cruel human beings. That, the nature is not being taken care by all of us, which has given us so much of facilitation. Even we are not even to revive, or even we are not able to sustain even the nature. I think I am speaking a lot now. I will just like to conclude by just saying that equal partnership between local and municipal government and private sector, indigenous people, indigenous communities, and civil societies can advance climate resilience development, including through international cooperation by addressing structural inequalities, insufficient financial resources, cross-city risk, and the integration of indigenous and indigenous knowledge. So climate change and socioeconomic inequalities are significant concern of the sustainability of the communities. With this, I'll close. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Shambhavi,
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that wonderful talk. Am I audible?
yes.
All right. Thank you again, ma'am, for that wonderful talk. I think a marker of a successful panel discussion is when we are about to exceed times. And the worst part about being one of the last members of the panelists is that we just have to rush through the things and move on to the next event. Yet we are so interested to hear to each and every person who is upon this panel. So with that undue pressure, I would now like to call upon Mr. Vincent Martinez. Thank you for agreeing to become a part of this panel. One thing that I wanted to just take forward from the talks that have happened before is that the symbolism and the kind of symbolism that we are talking about when we discuss cultural resilience and capacity building in, community resilience and the capacity building in these communities. And I think buildings become the biggest symbol out there as not just as a method to induce resilience, but also to kind of inspire the whole idea of protecting the environment, etc. So what do you have to say to that? And please take it up forward.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate being invited to speak with you all and to be on such a panel with such distinguished speakers. I'm just so moved by all of the remarks here, and I'll try to allude to them as I talk about the built environment. So something that's probably, the built environment is sort of an unknown sleeping culprit of the climate change crisis. Most folks don't recognize that about 40% of energy-related power emissions, CO2 emissions, come from the built environment, from the demand for energy services. And we live in the built environment. We're in the built environment 99% of our time, as opposed to 1% of our time outside of the built environment and the rest of nature. But what's really kind of moving about that is when we originally started building buildings and civilizations, we kept them to a relative set of sizes of expansion. We used local materials, local design for our own climates that worked for us. And really, how did we become such a huge portion of the greenhouse gas emissions came really in the early part of the 20th century. And it was called the modern movement. It was exported out of Europe, and it looked at it had good motivations. At the time, in many areas around the world, you would have the industry associated with living situations. You'd be right next to pollution, and they were really closed off in our environments. And so the idea of the modern movement was to open up the floor plan of the building, experience large windows, try to understand, have a connection to the outdoor environment. We really wanted to connect exterior to the environment. And we had fossil fuels that could power the climate controls of our interior environment, but it wasn't really understood where that power was coming from and the externalities of it. And so what we've happened over the last 100+ years is that we've started to outsource our pollution to power plants and electricity generation in order to comfort and control our interior environments. And we've essentially adopted a European style of building that was called the international style. And it became a style in the 1930s that was exported around the world, where it was no longer local anymore. You could have the same building in New Delhi, in Abu Dhabi, in Seattle, Washington, where I'm based. It was a glass building that towered above all the others, and it sucked so much energy from these fossil fuel plants that's how we ended up in this situation. And we, not just at a building level, but also at a planning level. We like to envision our future. That's the power of design. And the same thing happens not only at a building, but also at a community level or a design for cities and regions. And we start to see that type of development again exported from mostly the global north and development of the European and North American context. But we don't recognize those as externalities until recently. So if we look at the trajectory from the modern movement, you saw more and more building in order to accommodate our growing population, more and more energy consumed by that building sector, and more emissions associated with that energy consumption. That has actually started to shift. So there's actually a hopeful movement here because of the power of changing the conversation and design. Now, when we got started in the early 2000s in the US, very little information was known about green building practices, energy conservation, decarbonization, and we sort of catalyzed a great movement in the United States, where we actually saw a decoupling of growth of the built environment, more buildings added to the building stock. And the energy consumption has not increased in the United States for building operations since 2005. And actually greenhouse gas emissions have dropped by about 30% since that time. So it's almost like we turn on a dime, and that's just by changing the power of conversation. Because I appreciate Ms. Cecile's notion, because it's really about talking about these issues, about bringing them to light, about finding creative design solutions. That's the power of design, is about looking at the orientation of the building, looking at how it's facing the sun, back to the old indigenous cultures and how we placed buildings and how they were used in local materials. That has really changed how we've completely designed the world now. And we're starting to see that decoupling of growth from emissions that we saw in the US for the last 15 years. Over the past few years, we're seeing that globally as well, where global building stock is increasing, energy consumption is starting to level out, and greenhouse gas emissions are going down. Now, big reason for that is the proliferation of renewable energy resources. And I was really enthused by Mr. Shardar's comments about the questions about where are we getting our power from? And are these centralized resources that are subject to energy security issues, that are subject to pollution issues, to who might own those resources, and then distributing them out across the world? But renewable power is so different than that, because it is distributed by nature. You don't have to pull it up from the ground, refine it, distill it, ship it across the world. redistill it, then push it back out and burn it into fossil fuels, and then put it out into the electricity grid. The sun and the wind are distributed free for everyone around the world. And so we're really talking about an equity issue, an energy security issue that now renewable power has opened up. The same thing can be said about buildings. It is not an opportunity like we saw in the modern movement in the 1930s, where we're talking about a globalization factor. We're actually coming back to our roots in the built environment and considering that we're not going to ship our buildings off to another country to be renovated, to be retrofitted for decarbonization. Those are opportunities that are local. Those are local jobs. And with the integration of on-site renewable energy systems like photovoltaics, we can then power those buildings in isolation from those centralized systems so that they can have sustainable and resilience to the community. But it's not just about being able to live in them. It's about growing economies of wealth within them. So about going back to our roots on how we build buildings as well. So you're looking more at opportunities for local building materials, bio-based materials, less about extraction from the earth, but more about working with the earth in a regenerative fashion in the built environment, not just from its energy usage, but also from its material consumption. So we're kind of entering a whole new domain on the topic of embodied carbon, about building materials and construction. We've been mostly talking about operating emissions in the built environment for the last few years, but we're starting to see headway and gains in that front. From design, from renewable energy proliferation, it's now time that we put the pressure of the built environment on industry to change their practices. The built environment consumes almost at least half of the industry pie. Steel and concrete, the two most destructive materials on the planet, use about 10% each of global CO2 emissions, are used primarily in the construction of the built environment, buildings and infrastructure. Sure, some of them go into vehicles, but in steel, but concrete for the most part is all used in the built environment, our buildings and our infrastructure. We have a great opportunity as design professionals, as policymakers, to set up policies and design practices that put pressure on industry to decarbonize faster. If they're not able to decarbonize, we'll use other materials. There are design choices that we can make in the built environment, and this is just beginning. I feel like we felt like we were running up a hill or a mountain. We were halfway up, and we look at the distance that we've come behind us and how far we've gone and how much more we have to go. But when we look at it from the side, we're almost like on a teeter-totter, where we're at the fulcrum of a real systematic change of social movements, that all we have to do is have a little bit more inertia, keep pushing, and we'll tip the teeter-totter forward. And we're really going to rush in a whole new design paradigm of the built environment, just like we did in the 1930s in the 2030s. So we're really excited about the future. And I think we've seen a lot of success stories, but this is the opportunity for all of us to double down on the built environment in order to see a positive, equitable future. And I'll stop there because I know we're already over time, but I've really appreciated the opportunity to speak with you all and the lively discussion.
Thank you so much, Vincent. That was a wonderful talk. I mean, the thing that you have said about built environment, I'm pretty sure, I mean, being a teacher here, I did not have much idea about it. So we have a lot of things to go back and research upon and read. Because of the paucity of time, I have n number of questions in front of me right now, but because of the paucity of time, we will not be able to take those questions right now. But you can direct those questions later on to us and ask your teachers as well. With this, I culminate this panel discussion by calling Ms. Betpriya Lahi for the vote of thanks. So Betpriya.
Okay, so before I give the quick vote of thanks, I would request all the panelists to maybe switch on their cameras once so that we can have one group photograph of everybody on screen for our memory record and for the audience as well. Please. If I could just request all the panelists to please switch on their cameras once. Sridhar sir.
I request Sridhar sir to switch it on. Betpriya?
Hi, Sridhar sir, if you can hear me.
For sure, maybe he's not there.
Okay, okay. All right, so we are all on screen. Ravina ma'am, whenever you're ready. Thank you, thank you. So we are almost at the end of this session. So when we started this, thinking about what do we want to discuss in the panel discussion, we started about 6 months ago. We had talks with Dean, and we have had individual meetings with all the panelists here. So they have met the student body who was actually creating the idea behind how we would like to learn from this entire system and from this entire deliberation on sustainability. So when we reached out to you, our basic idea was that we wanted to learn from your experience. And we really, really wanted to learn from the diverse fields that go around this idea. So now that it is culminating, I individually thank each and every one of you for consenting, for joining here today. To Dr. Datta, who left us, but he started the session and he was the driving force behind the idea of community building when we were trying to really think about the idea on this panel discussion. To Mr. Vincent Martinez, thank you, sir, for joining us today. To Nuzhat ma'am, Professor Dr. Nuzhat Parveen ma'am, thank you ma'am for being here and joining here, taking time out of your busy schedule. To Mr. Anurag Bajpai, sir, thank you again. Thank you for listening to our Ashesh's and our calls and for patiently listening to them and for joining us here today. To Sridhar sir, we hope that in future we can again connect over other endeavors. We would have so much to discuss, so much to learn. And the students are very excited about your body of work. And last but not the least, Madam Cecile, for being so wonderful and so knowledgeable and so appreciative of what we are trying to do. And we shared a similar conference that ma'am conducted on 23rd and 24th, I believe, ma'am, on ideas. Yes, ma'am. So we were trying to twin with her, but we couldn't. But thank you again that you took time out and you came here today. And to last but not the least, to Dean ma'am for being the guiding force and the idea behind this entire session. And to all the faculty members and not the least the moderators, Durga ma'am and Shambhuvi ma'am, for organizing this session so well. So thank you very much. And I hope in future we again connect back in physical format and take this discussion and conversation forward. Thank you.
Since Sridhar sir is here, we can again click a pic if we want.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, Sridhar sir has joined.
Nushat ma'am is not there.
I have clicked the picture. I'll do it again. I'll do it.
Nushat ma'am is there.
Yeah.
Just a minute. Ma'am is also there.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mrs. Sil.